really easy to create some powerful, powerful knots as you're doing this.
Oh, I get it. That's an electrical joke.
All right, picking this up on the next day. We've finished putting the rock lights in place. April's back, so I've got a little bit of hand with the camera. We're now at a place where the next problem, after having fished all the wiring for the rock lights up alongside the frame rails, and there's a body harness that runs there on both sides. So this is just run alongside and zip tied to that harness as necessary. Is we've come forward now to the lower control arm bracket. We need to come up and into the position here for the upfitter wiring. This side, it's probably not going to be a problem. The 20 feet of wire that they give us should be plenty. On the passenger side, we need to do the same thing, but we also will need to come across the firewall because we need to get to the same location. I think on that side we may want to do something else, just because the shortest of these wires is here, and it'll be pretty much at its limit, as well as bringing all of this up through the engine compartment. It's just a lot of wire. So probably what we're going to do is bring this up, and then I will do the cut splice so that it's only a single wire to come in rather than the big cable bundle. So the next trick is to find a path up the firewall. So sitting here looking, there's a bunch more stuff on this side than there is on the driver's side, just right up against the firewall. It's really hard to see what the paths are from this side as to how I want to bring the wiring up. So inside the frame rail, like if I go to this side, this right here that you can see that's all wrapped up in heat shielding is the exhaust. I don't love the idea of having my wiring running right next to something that could well be hot enough to melt it. But as I sit here staring straight up, right behind this edge of the fender, I can see that there is factory wiring right in here, and I can see light at the top of the frame. So what I'm going to do is take my fish, yeah, I think that's going to work really well as a place to have the wiring from this side come up, because that'll be right next to where it needs to be. So this is about where it came up, so let's see if we can just go all the way down. That looks like a viable option.
The benefit of lifted vehicles.
For sure.
I like how he utilized the hook here to make sure his fish didn't go, get away from him, become the fish that got away.
These are the things you want to avoid doing when you're fishing wires, like wrapping them around something you don't want to have be in the middle of your wiring. Plan B is I pull this one through and get fewer tangles if I wrap the wiring up as I go. Okay, so that is my 3 wires from the rear of the vehicle routed to where they're going to come up. So next up is to attach these to the fish and bring them forward. And what I'm going to do is try to get them to run together, but I'm going to try to preserve all of the length of the wiring as I go. Now we just have to not tie it in a knot pulling it up the firewall to make sure that my wires are all laid out nice and flat so they don't tie themselves in a knot as they come up. And they are nice and clean. Now they're coming up here. And I'm going to put a zip tie right there just so they get held in place. So the challenge with this at this point is there's certainly enough wire to come forward and splice to the upfitter connection. It's not a lack of wire, but I'm going to have 4 of these total because I've still got to bring the front one up, plus 4 from that side. So that's a total of 8 wires being spliced to one. I'm really not fond of that. I'm also not fond of running all of this wiring through my engine compartment. So what I'm going to do is bring these plus the 4th one together, and I will do a 4-to-1 splice here. I'll do a 4-to-1 splice on the far side of the engine compartment the same way. And then I will do a splice for those 2 wires to my upfitter connection. One from the left, one from the right. So it'll be a 2-to-1 splice here rather than trying to do like a 8 wire to 1 all in one place. So this is my front rock light. This is the one that's going to be forward of everything else. And the question is, what's the best way to route this wire? So I'm going to see, I can see light right straight through here. I kind of want to see where that's going to come out.
Whoa. Be mindful of where your hook is. Yeah, don't scratch your paint. Let the rocks do that.
So that came right down the front of the spring bracket here. And right here is where I'm thinking I want to put this with the ability to be able to move it forward or backward. So that's actually not a bad place at all to be able to run that wire. I probably will run it on the inside of these wiring harnesses, but that's easy enough to do. So I broke my zip tie that I have for just holding that fender back so it doesn't get caught by the sway bar. But that makes it a lot easier to get in there and access the space. Now I don't want this too tight. If I was never going to move that wire, that would be fine. But if I have ideas that I might want to, say, move this, out here to the front of my bumper, I want to make sure that I'm leaving some wire as I pull this to allow for that. Now in this case, I'm going to want to bury this extra wire up high. So I'm going to pull it out here, measure my lengths, and then I'll pull this the rest of the way up. It is really easy to create some powerful knots as you're doing this. Quick plug for these Redline tuning hood struts. This is an aftermarket add-on. It's a really easy mod for the vehicle. Just a bracket here and a bracket up here, bolt on. Notice there's no prop rod holding my hood up. This does make working on these things a whole lot more convenient. You cut the blue wire and then the green wire. So there are some times I will just throw stuff away because this is actually a cable. It's 2 wires, a hot and a ground, in a shielded thing. I will keep this stuff for future use just because it works really well for being able to run an additional auxiliary light or something of that nature, and it's a tough enough jacketed wire that you don't have to run it inside a wire loom or something like that to keep it under control.
Yeah, sometimes people throw it away.
And so yeah, this will be all of the 4-to-1 splice for this side of the vehicle. For this, I think I'm going to go with a soldered connection, one of these
Solder sticks?
solder stick style connectors, just because I've got so many wires in here.
You made sure the wires are overlapping and then shove it on.
Just let that cool for a second. Okay, so using a big heavy 12 gauge for my ground, just because I like to have heavy grounds and it's easier to work with. As I'm looking at what the vehicle has here for the upfitter wiring that I'm connecting to, this is going to be a pretty small wire. And so I don't necessarily want this to be a junction to big heavy wires. I'm also going to be doing a tie to the amber DRL function from the pillar lights and the bumper. So not wanting a lot of really big heavy wire to come together with this small wire. So something closer to what the vehicle itself is using. This is actually still a little bit bigger than the vehicle's wiring for our hot. Now, we're going to do a test before we go any further, because this is the point where if I have to redo these connections, I would rather redo them now than after I've done other things. So just a simple jumper cable, wire jumper to ground, into the ground lead, and hooking up the other hot lead. And now we check to make sure all the lights turned on. Yes. And yes. So, success.
This is just heat shrink, weather protectant.
Guess if I like it, I gotta put a ring on it, right?
Of course, the funny part of that is neither of us wear rings.
We're going to try to do basically the same thing on this side as we did on the other. Obviously, the configuration of the engine compartment is different, and there are different things that are in the way. Routing around the airbox is going to mean a different path on this side, although we're going to try to come up with approximately the same location, the same way around the booster and everything else, inclusive of our washer reservoir. It's going to make this a little bit different, but I'm hoping we can get basically through the same spot here and end up down below. We'll start with the fish and see where we end up. With a little persistence, I've managed to get my fish on this side to come through to approximately the same location. Definitely not as simple, not as clean, but I think it's going to have the same net effect. with what we want to do. We'll see if I have to break that zip tie as well to get this to come up where I want to. Okay. So that brings it up here, basically in the same general vicinity of what we've got on the other side. What I think I'm going to do on this side is the same thing. We'll bring the wiring up here and we'll do our splices to the single red, the single black. We will ground somewhere in this vicinity. Seems like I've got a few different bolts I could choose from. And then we'll run just the hot wire across the hood to the other side. That should stay out of the way while I figure out the ones from the rear. There is definitely a path which is similar right around the, in this case it's going to be the washer tank, which is fine, no problems with that. There it is. Okay. And there's my fish.
Do we take this off now?
Yep.
Okay. You're not even looking at it. Back up. Let me do it! Did April catch a fish?
Looks like they're all clean here.
Yay! We got a big fish.
A little bit of an issue making sure we get a good ground. Front light, mid light, rear light. Is the rear one on back there?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Hi, Zeffy.
Voila.
So now you just have to figure out where you want to ground it, right?
Yep. Thinking, try to use one of these here. Could possibly use one of these as well. Or even this back here, depending on what seems to work best. So picking this spot because it's kind of along my way as I'm running my wiring over. Not real concerned about the paint here. We'll see how that works out. If I have to, I can remove the paint from the bolt. But you can see where just the threads going up and down have kind of cleared it off. And I've got a nice shiny metal contact on both sides. So as long as this proves to be a good ground, we'll be in good shape. I think I'm going to go ahead and run a wire loom from roughly this point over to the other. Since I chose to use just a wire, this has no abrasion or protection. In retrospect, I probably could have used some of the extra wiring that they had, although the actual wires in these are quite a bit thinner than this, so this will carry more current, but this would have had the additional abrasion resistance.
6 1/2 dozen?
A little bit. And that gets us to a point where we've got our wiring from both sides kind of together in the same place.
Use your words.
Thinking about whether or not I want to put a bigger loom around this where they come together. Just a little bit of loom to bring all of this stuff together and kind of try to keep it neat. Same way, that'll be a ground.
Seemed like it easily reached that one.
Well, and there's actually a big ground right here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Now, these are the huts for the rock lights. This is for the DRLs on the pillar and bumper lights. What I'm going to do is put them together so that when the rock lights are on, the little amber low power lights on the other, essentially accent lights, are also on. Shortening things up so that they're kind of closer to the same length. Just have this a little bit be cleaner under the hood. So finished product here. We've got the Upfitter wiring from the Jeep with the 3 of the 4 switches. Again, we're holding the 4th one for eventual backup lights. All the wiring coming together for the rock lights and the accents. And then the wiring coming together for the driving lights on the bumper and the pillar lights. And these 2 are our grounds for the driving lights and the pillar lights. And I'm missing there's the missing ground. I was gonna say, I should have 3 grounds here. Why do I not have 3 grounds? Okay, so now we hook up the grounds and the lighting should all work. Tighten up the ground. I have to admit, the spot in here next to the battery is starting to get very crowded with all of that wiring. But it's basically all the wiring it needs to accommodate, so it's all there. Okay, let's find out if we've got lights. Okay, let's see if this works. First up, this is auxiliary 4, which should be my rock lights and the accent lights on the pillars and bumper.
That is correct.
Okay, auxiliary 3 should be nothing, because that's exactly going to be backup lights.
Backup or rear floods?
Probably rear floods.
Okay, understood.
Reverse lights. Auxiliary 2 should be the pillars.
Woo! Yep.
And auxiliary 1 should be the bumpers.
Indeed.
So the Upfitter kit on the JL has these 4 switches that are down here. Auxiliary 1, auxiliary 2, auxiliary 3, and auxiliary 4. These are the switches that we're using for this. So auxiliary 4 is my rock lights, auxiliary 2 is the pillars, and auxiliary 1 is going to be my bumper lights. Now, if you come up and look at the factory head unit, the way this works is under settings, you have the auxiliary switches, and you have the 4 switches here that can be configured to whether they are a latching, which means they turn on and turn off, or whether they're a momentary for something that, if you wanted to maybe set them up to be your Morse code key or something. You can set them up as to whether they operate with the ignition when the vehicle is in run mode, or if they're going to operate in the battery state so that you can have them turned on when the vehicle is turned off. Most of my lights, I would just assume that they turned off when the vehicle was off. You can also have them whether or not they remember the last state they were in. So if you turn all the lights off, or turn them all on and then turn the vehicle off, come back in, if you've got them set to recall, they'll all turn back on. And you can configure that for all 4 switches the same way. And if there's any Chrysler engineers watching this, it would be really cool to be able to actually come back in here and assign a name or a function to those, so I could actually say, these are my, bumper lights, these are my pillar lights, these are my bunny burners, down on the bottom of this. Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of the electrical portion of the project. We've got the aux beam driving lights on the bumper, the wide angle 5-inch pods up on the pillars, and our rock lights installed. It should go a long ways this winter with the darker days, the mud, helping me see those deer on the side of the road here in my neighborhood before they end up in front of my bumper. And who knows, maybe we'll look at the big night run next year or something I might try to do.
And remember, the most useful thing rock lights do for you is trailer loading.
Is loading on the trailer in the middle of the night. Yep. This one doesn't ride the trailer.
Yet.